What is your full name, sir?
Dale Martin Marker,
Where and when were you born?
born in Ohio, October the 17th, 1924,
So how old are you right now?
93.
Do you feel like you're 93?
Well, yes and no. My eyes is my biggest problem. I got macular degeneration and glaucoma.
What does 93 feel like physically?
Well, some days I feel like I'm 93, then other days I depends on the weather. Weather's got a lot to do with it. I've been cooped up here now for 3 or 4 weeks. I've missed several of my militaries, and
What branch of the service were you in during World War II?
infantry,
What division, regiment, and company were you in?
3rd Division, the 15th Regiment, 3rd Battalion, L Company.
And what was your specific role in Company L?
I was in the weapons platoon. I was on the light machine gun and the bazooka. And
Where did you see combat in World War II?
I joined the 3rd Division on Anzio Beachhead about 2 weeks after the invasion. And we was pinned down there for 4 months. Then I got hit my first time on Anzio the 20th of March. And I prayed for a flesh wound. So miserable and dirty. And I walked out there that night, and a German 88 come in on us. We was marching back up to the front lines, and we was walking through a plowed field. And this 88 come in and got 9 of us out of the platoon, and I got hit the least of any of them. Killed my foxhole buddy right in front of me, Thomas. He was from Connecticut. And but both times I was wounded, they got me back right away. I didn't have to lay out there on the battlefield. And so I got 35-day rest out of the first wound. I was hit in the buttocks. And then I got back on Anzio. Oh, let's see, I got hit 20th of March, and I was back 35 days. So I got back in April. And then we was back up at the front for a while, and they pulled us back to take training for the big breakout back at the beach. And so then when the breakout come, November the 23rd, 1944, my company was a salt company, and we went over the canal at 6 o'clock in the morning, and after 2 hours of fighting, we had 196 men strength. That didn't count the mortar squad. But anyhow, the captain lined us up in the ditch, and there was 17 of us still able to go. So they attached us to I Company till we could get replacements. And John Shirley didn't remember that. He didn't know we was attached to I Company. So we fought on to Rome. Our own plane scraped us at Valmontone and got some of the boys. And one side of the road was straight up, and the other side was you had to jump down on some rocks. And I was lucky. I jumped down there and didn't break anything, but some of the boys broke their legs, and it was kind of terrible. Then we fought on to Rome, and they declared Rome an open city, and just before we got into Rome, my trench foot broke out on me again, so I didn't get to garrison in Rome with the boys. I was back in the evac hospital soaking my feet in potassium permanganate. And so then after 10 days in Rome, they pulled us back to Naples to take amphibious training for the southern France invasion. And then August the 15th, 44, why we invaded southern France. And going in on the Higgins boats, your Navy boys, you know, run the Higgins boats. And this one sergeant in the Higgins boats that I was in, he put his .45 to this Navy kid's head. He said, "Now we will land on dry sand," and we did. But then a kid not too far in front of me stepped on a mine. He never knew what hit him. But we didn't have a whole lot of on the invasion of southern France like they had at Normandy.
Casualties.
Yeah. So then in 13th of August, we loaded on boats for the southern France invasion, August the 15th. And then we had the Germans on the run up through France. Well, we had some battles, and part of the time we rode on tanks, but I didn't like that because you was too much of a target. I'd rather walked. And but they was setting up roadblocks to try to slow us down, and then we had some battles at Remiremont, France, and little town by the name of Allen, little town of Allen, France. We was surrounded, and that was a battle, but we fought our way out of it, and then we went on and we got up into the Vosges Mountains, where I got hit the second time, seriously wounded by our own artillery, friendly fire.
What happened? What happened?
Well, we'd taken this wooded area the day before, the 21st of October. That's when I knocked that tank out and got the Silver Star. And on a Sunday morning at 10:30, on the 22nd of October, another outfit had moved through and was going to do the attacking that day. And so I was down talking to Sergeant Gant, the machine gun sergeant, didn't even have my helmet on. And these shells started coming over, and I told Sergeant Gant, I said, "Well, that's our own artillery, but it's getting too close to suit me." So I started from a foxhole, and I didn't make it. One hit a tree right above me and come down like rain. And Paycine from Springfield was in the foxhole with no helmet on. And I hollered at him. I said, "Paycine, I'm hit." Didn't get no answer, and I got onto the foxhole, and here he was hit in the head with shrapnel. He died side of me in the hospital that night. And they hauled me back on the hood of a Jeep. Both times I was wounded, I was lucky they got me off the front right away. So I was in the hospital for 5 months. Well, I went through the evac hospital at Epinal, and the medical captain says, "Well, soldier, you got $1 million wound. You won't see no more action." So I was in the hospital for 5 months, and while I was in the hospital, I'm ahead of my story a little bit. At the evac hospital, the company runner, John Doland, come up to me in the bed and to check on me and Paycine. I told him Paycine had passed away during the night, and so he said, "Well," he said, "I just come through headquarters and I heard Lieutenant Kalt and Sergeant Wirtz talking about putting you in for Silver Star." Well, I'd forgot all about it. And I was in the hospital 5 months, and I was on the way back to. Well, I had the SOC department in the quartermaster, and I had 15 German prisoners working for me, and they. So one day we marched down to the warehouses from our camp, and we was in line to march down, and Sergeant Williams said, "Marker, come here." I went up there to him. He said, "You know anything about you're supposed to receive the Silver Star?" Well, I'd forgot all about Dolan talking to us in the VAC hospital. Well, he said, "Lieutenant France is going to drive you into Marseille, France, to stand ceremonies for the Silver Star." Well, I come back to that quartermaster outfit, and I was king. They sent me to Nice, France on a 7-day rest and called me Silver Star Marker, and they thought it was something that they had somebody in their outfit that had the Silver Star. And so it went on, and of course that was, I'm a little ahead of my story again. I had to go, I went to this combat, when I left the hospital, I went to this combat conditioning battalion, and I was there 3 weeks, and I had to go before board. I got up before this major, and he said, "Well, how you doing, soldier?" I said, "Well, I'm having trouble keeping up on these hikes." I said, "My leg and hips are bothering me." And he looked at my records a little more, and he said, "Well, you've been overseas so many months?" I said, "Yeah." "You've been wounded twice?" "Yeah." "You had trench foot?" "Yeah." He looked my records over a little more and looked up at me and said, "I think we ought to find somebody who can go up and take your place." I rode home and told my folks, "I'm top of the hill, I'm coming down." And then that's when they shipped me back to Marseille to join this quartermaster outfit. And that was, they had it made, but somebody had to supply us up on the front. They had to have their quartermaster. So I was there that was in April, and I was there till November, till I had enough points as soon as the war was over to come home, but there was other boys that had just as many and more, and I had to wait my turn. So that was it.
Was it weird being in a non-combat unit after going through combat?
It was nice. It was nice. Yeah, that was great. I enjoyed my time with that quartermaster.
You think they had it too good?
Did
they have it too good?
Oh, I won't say they had it too good, but they had it a lot better than us boys on the front. So I suppose I've left some things out, but
I'm going to ask you questions now, okay?
Okay.
Was there anything else you wanted to add? Was there anything else you wanted to add?
No.
You were born in Ohio?
Right.
Where did you grow up?
Where did I grow up? In Franklin Township.
And describe Franklin Township back then in the 1920s and 30s.
Well, there's 571 that goes past my house. It used to be Route 71. And then when they had 71 Interstate, they changed this to 571. But I can remember when this was gravel road past here. I was 4 or 5 years old when they tarred and gravelled it.
When you were growing up, what kind of things did you do for fun?
Rode my bicycle. And we had a swimming hole that we went down to. Had fox terrier dog, take him along, and there wasn't things to do like there is now.
What were the first few jobs you had growing up?
Well, when I come home from school, I had to fill the wood box with wood. And then when the wind, we had a wind pump. When the wind wasn't blowing to pump water for the stalk, you had to pump it by hand. and always had chores to do.
What kind of farm did you grow up on?
Well, we had chickens, hogs, cattle. My dad always said, don't put all your eggs in one basket, so we had a little bit of everything.
Did your father serve in World War One?
No, no,
Did you have any brothers or sisters?
no, I just got a twin sister.
What did you want to do with your life before the war broke out?
Well, I didn't like school, so I wasn't going to go to college. I was just going to be here on the farm, help farm. Back then, we raised tobacco. And I raised 29 crops of tobacco.
What high school did you go to?
Franklin School,
And what year did you graduate?
1942.
When you and your buddies would get together when you were a teenager, what kind of mischief would you all get into?
Well, we'd go into Greenville on Saturday night with our folks. And, of course, you could buy a pack of cigarettes for 10 cents back then. And we'd buy a pack of cigarettes for 10 cents and go back in the alley and smoke them on a Saturday night. But that's the only mischief we got into.
Any pranks?
Yeah.
What about on Halloween?
Well, they always had a Halloween parade in Greenville. And
Did you soap any windows?
no, I don't remember ever soaping windows, but we upset toilets,
Which means what?
outside toilets. Just push them over.
You guys would go around and just push the outhouses down?
See, we did some, yes.
And were there ever people inside?
One time there's a fella inside in Pittsburgh.
What happened?
We wasn't long leaving town. But we didn't get near the trouble they get into now.
Was he real upset?
Well, I never went back and asked him.
Could you hear him though?
I could hear him holler when we upset the toilet, yeah.
Did you go steady with anyone when you were growing up?
Nope,
Did you date at all?
no. No, I was too backward.
How did you hear about the attack on Pearl Harbor?
We was over in Pittsburgh, a little town 4 miles over here, on a Sunday afternoon, and we was playing pool, and it come over the radio that the Japs had bombed Pearl Harbor. I was a junior in high school then.
What was that like to hear that your country had been attacked?
Well, you really didn't realize then. So, let's see, I was in junior in high school then, and then that had been in 41, and then 43. March of 43 is when I was drafted.
So you were drafted in March of 1943.
Right.
And then what happens to you?
I was at Fort Thomas, Kentucky, on the 6th of March, and we got to come home. And then the 13th of March, we had to go back, and that's when I was sent to Camp Butler, North Carolina, and joined the 78th Lightning Division.
And what were you doing at Camp Butler? Basic training?
Well, we trained with this division. Yeah, you went through basic. And in June, I got to come home on my first furlough, and then went back and done more training. And in October, I got to come home on my second furlough. And I was trying to get out of the infantry. So I had my name in for air cadet test. And they got an order for replacements on Monday, and my name was on it. So that's when I went overseas. Went to Fort Meade, Maryland, and from there to Norfolk, Virginia, Then we loaded on the A.E. Anderson and sailed for Iran, Africa. And every 10 minutes, the boat would change courses on account of the German submarines. So it took us 11 days to go from Norfolk to Iran, Africa.
Could you actually feel the ship moving?
Oh
Change
yeah,
course?
oh yeah. Yeah, a lot of guys got seasick.
Did you?
Never got seasick. I got sick on a limey boat from Iran, Africa, up to Naples, and lost my breakfast one morning. That's the only time I ever had any trouble on. But that limey boat was, it was dirty, and you slept in hammocks above the mess tables. And I was in that hammock, and then I was eating breakfast at the mess table and thinking of who stepped on that. I made it to the first landing and lost my breakfast.
So before you were, when you were drafted in the Army, how old were you, Mr. Marker?
18.
Did you have thoughts of joining up before you were drafted?
No, I didn't.
Was there a particular branch that you wanted to get into?
Yeah, I wanted to get in the Navy. They asked me what I wanted. Well, we can't use you in the Navy. You got second-degree fat feet, and put me in the infantry.
Why'd you want the Navy?
So I'd have a dry place to sleep as long as the boat was afloat. So,
Looking back at the way your life turned out, are you happy or proud of the fact that you were in the infantry?
oh yeah, I wouldn't want to go through it again.
So,
I always said if they come after me again, there'd be two of us wouldn't go. Me and the guy'd come after me.
sit back a little bit. So, Mr. Marker, after you're sent overseas, you get to North Africa. All the fighting was over in North Africa.
Yeah.
Did you see any remnants of the battles that had taken place?
No, we didn't. We wasn't there, but I don't know, just a day or two, and then we loaded on that British ship up to Naples.
So
And from Naples, we loaded on LSTs up to Anzio, beachhead.
So you joined what division at the Anzio beachhead?
3rd Infantry.
Had you heard about the 3rd Division before?
I don't think, no. But they made the landing on the 22nd of January of 44, and then I joined them February the 6th.
So take me through how you were introduced to the men of Company L. How did you go from being in a replacement depot to Company L, 3rd Division?
Well, when we landed on that at Anzio, they took us in trucks and took us out in the center of a field, and we was in slit trenches. And me and Al Tomastovic, he was from Chicago, we laid in that slit trench all night and so scared to death, about half crying. And then the next night, they took us up to join the outfit. I went to the 3rd, and Al Tomastovic went to the 45th. And I joined them. It was around the straw stack. And this sergeant, I wanted out of the rifle platoon. And the sergeant said, any of you replacements had any training on machine guns? And I tapped him on the shoulder. And that's how I got in the weapons platoon instead of the rifle company.
Why didn't you want to be in the rifle platoon?
Because your replacements, they put you out there as first number 1 or number 2 scout. And your rifle platoon is always out in front of your weapons platoon, you know. So, like when we opened up the Anzio beachhead, all 3 of the rifle platoons were wiped out. The 17 of us was still able, and most of us was in the weapons platoon.
Is that right?
So,
But how close would the rifle platoons and the weapons platoons be?
well, you'd be close. Only your machine gun was give the rifle platoon support, and so,
But I'm saying, how far back would the weapons platoon be?
oh, not very far. Right, it was pretty much right up there too.
Like 100 yards back, or not as much?
Not that much, no.
So, you get introduced to the weapons platoon of Company L. The men who are already there, how do they treat you, the veterans?
Good. They treated us good. But you didn't get to know you didn't get to know anybody very long till they'd get wounded or killed. Or I seen replacements come up there, and before they knowed what platoon they was going to be in, it'd be all over with. Shell'd come in, it's gone.
You've heard about those things, or you actually have seen that?
Oh, I seen them things. Yep.
Do you remember specifically what happened
You mean,
with that replacement story?
well, the Germans was shelling us, and it's just unlucky they got hit. I had so many close calls, and I was so lucky. So lucky. I had somebody on my side.
What do you attribute your survival to?
I don't know. I don't know, but I was right in the thick of it.
When you first joined Company L, the combat veterans, did they give you any advice, or did they tell you anything about their experiences?
No.
Were you put in the machine gun or the mortar section?
Machine gun.
And what was your specific role?
Well, I was assistant gunner, then I was on the bazooka. Most of the time on the bazooka. So,
Mr. Marker, say that again. When you joined the Company L weapons platoon,
yeah.
what section were you in?
Machine gun section.
And what was your specific role in the machine gun section?
Well, ammunition bearer and assistant gunner, and but I was lucky. The gunner was. I never had to fire the machine gun, but I fired the bazooka.
So you were used as a bazooka man?
Yeah.
Now, every company has how many bazooka men?
Well, each company just had one bazooka man.
And it's always in the weapons platoon?
Yeah.
So, describe to me the bazooka that the U.S. Army used during World War II. What did it look like? How did you use it?
Well, it was just a long tube, all one piece, and you're supposed to have a mask on when you fired it, but the mask got gone, and I had powder burns all over my face from the firing it.
How heavy was the bazooka?
Oh, I don't know what it was. The one I had was just single tube. Then I got one. I sent for one after I got home, and it come apart. In fact, my grandson's got it over there at his place. And but it was heavier than the one I had.
And what about the ammunition, the rounds that the bazooka used?
What about them?
What did they look like? How heavy were they?
Oh, I don't know I don't know how heavy they was. It's just It's kind of a rocket-like affair.
Did you carry them?
You had an ammunition barrier. That's another thing about my citation that wasn't right. They had me out there firing my bazooka for 10 minutes. Well, that was wrong. I was just out there long enough to get one shot in, and my first rocket hit the tank and knocked the guns out. And then the tank driver, he could still back the tank up. So I turned to get my ammunition barrel to reload me, and he hadn't followed me out there. So if I wouldn't have got it with the first rocket, I wouldn't be sitting here either.
So you were all alone?
I don't know how they missed me. They had me under fire with their machine gun, and I can still hear them bullets whizzing around. How they missed me, I don't know.
But the citation says your ammo bearer was with you?
No, that citation said that I was out there for 10 minutes firing my bazooka.
But you weren't?
No, I wasn't. I was just there long enough to fire that one rocket, and I can still hear it hit the tank.
What did it sound like?
It made a loud noise. But before that, we got pinned down by a stone house, and they called on me, and I fired a round into that, and the Germans come out and give up. Now, how many was in the house that I killed, I don't know.
As the bazooka man, are you carrying any other weapon with you?
45.
That's it?
Yeah.
Not a carbine?
No.
So did you ever carry a rifle in the war?
M1, yeah. First two Germans I killed with an M1, crawling towards my foxhole.
Can you take me through the experience? Where was this? What happened?
Well, we was on the front there on Anzio, and this particular night, and we had barbed wire entanglement rolls in front of us, and this particular night, while they had an outpost, and the Germans come in and captured two boys on the outpost, and Thomas, my foxhole buddy, was down under his shelter half having a smoke, and I kicked him. I said, "Get up here, we got company." Well, then I heard the Germans talking, and they started under our barbed wire roll, and I opened up on them with their M1 rifle, and the firefight was over. And the sergeant come up there, and he went out and checked, and come back to my foxhole. He said, "Well, you done a good job. You got two of them, a captain and a sergeant." So that's when I decided you either had to kill or be killed.
What was that like for you, the first time you actually had to shoot at a human?
Like I say, I was scared all the time, scared stiff. 19-year-old boy. Yep. So.
Was there a change in who you were before and who you were after that incident?
Yeah.
What would you say that change was?
Well, like I say, I decided it's either kill or be killed from then on.
And how close did they get?
To where I shot him, you mean?
How close were they to you when you fired?
About from here to the fireplace there, starting under the barbed wire roll that we had in front of our foxholes.
And this was at night?
Yeah.
How could you see them?
I heard them talking. I went by where I heard the talk, and I hit them.
So did you see their silhouettes though?
No.
Was it pitch black?
Yes.
And you just fired in
the vicinity. I fired all 8 of the clip. I fired the whole clip.
Okay, that makes more sense. I was going to say, if you only fired 2 shots...
I fired the whole clip. And then the grave test station come up the next night to get these Germans. And they was dragging this one by his hind legs, and it was rainy and cold, and his arm was flopping, and he hit me in the face. His hand hit me in the face. Now, you think that didn't so cold chills down your back. But I always told everybody that he slapped me for shooting him. But
Mr. Marker, when you were firing at those two Germans, what was going on in your head?
scared to death. Scared. Anybody tells you they wasn't scared,
What?
I was scared the whole time on the front lines.
Did you really believe that you were going to get killed?
Yes,
And how old were you when you were in combat?
19.
What's that like, being 19 years old, not knowing if you're going to survive another day?
Well, I'd give up ever getting home.
You did?
Oh yeah, I'd give. I thought one of them's going to get me.
So what kind of attitude does someone take on when they feel that they're going to die?
Well, there's a lot of difference in nervous systems. A lot of difference in nervous systems. I carried a kid back that wasn't hit very hard. He died in my arms just from the shock of being wounded. Oh, he's going up through France. He was from Mississippi. Thigpen was his name. And then I had boys drop right side of me. Sniper, get him. Lucky me, I tell you. Then we was on a roadblock one night in France. And it was a Y in the road. And we had a machine gun down each road, and the bazooka squad, and my pack. And I'd went off guard at 4:30 that morning. And at daylight, the company runner come up and wanted to know, where's the boys in the machine guns? And we're down on the road. They said, nothing down there on the road. Here the Germans had walked in and captured 6 of the boys and took both machine guns and took the bazooka and my pack. And another close call. So this Kenny Lynch was one of them that was captured, and he was from Lancaster, Ohio. And I went to see him after the war, and he said 2 of them Germans walked right up where we was sleeping and never woke us. That's how close I come to getting captured that night. So I had a lot of close calls, but here I am.
Describe to me, what was it like coming back home after all your combat experiences?
Well, it was great to be home, and we come home on a Hermitage, and past New York, past the harbor, and statue
How did you get home? On what?
on a USS Hermitage. And of course, it come straight home. It didn't jog ever. We come home in 7 days. And they put me with the 66th Infantry Division to come home at. That's what I was in when I was discharged at Atterbury, Camp Atterbury, Indiana.
And tell me about what was it like coming back home to your family?
Well, they knowed I was coming home, but they didn't know when. And after I got discharged at Atterbury, I took the train to Greenville and got off the train and walked up to Nupp's Pure Oil Station, where me and my dad loafed during the war, and he was him and my dad was great hunters together and fishermen. So Sam Nupp, he brought me out home. And when I walked in, my folks knowed I was coming, they didn't know when. So,
What was that reunion like?
well, grabbed each other and hugged each other, and glad to be home. Didn't think I'd ever make it.
Did you have difficulties readjusting to civilian life after the war?
No.
No nightmares?
Oh yeah. Yeah, I dreamed the Germans was after me and my gun wouldn't fire. Dreamed that a lot. And it was an adjustment as far as that. But see, I had all that time in that quartermaster outfit to get readjusted.
What about loud noises?
Well, I didn't like to go to fireworks,
What did it remind you of?
the front lines. We had, on Anzio, there was fireworks all night long. Their shells going over and ours going over, and I'll show you I'll show you the big gun that we called it Anzio Annie.
Tell me about your experiences against the Anzio Annie.
Well, the evac hospital on Anzio wasn't safe at all because the Germans shelled it and bombed it. And there was 4 nurses at the Anzio evac hospital that earned the Silver Stars. 4 nurses got Silver Stars for their heroic actions.
So I want to go back to your first experiences in combat. After you were introduced to Company L, was it immediately that you became the bazooka man?
No, I was in the machine gun section, and I carried an M1 at that time.
And how long were you in the machine gun section, would you say?
Well, I'd say most of the time, but the morning that I was put on the bazooka, I'd been on the machine gun, and the Captain Gates called me up there that morning, said, "Marker, you're going to have to take the bazooka today." And the boys the day before got wounded or killed, I don't know which. But anyhow, I was on the bazooka. That was on Saturday, the 21st of October. And like I say, we got pinned down by that stone house, and they called for the bazooka man. And I fired around in there, and they'd come out and give up. And we go much further till we got pinned down by that German tank. And they called on me again.
So you got the bazooka after the invasion of France?
Yeah. Yep.
You didn't use the bazooka at all in Italy?
No.
So talk to me about Anzio. What was the terrain like?
The Germans had the hills all around us, and we was in the valley. Couldn't even stick your head out of the foxhole in the daytime.
Why?
Give our positions away. And you had to get out at night and do your job, and stretch yourself, and get a little exercise.
Did you go on any patrols?
Oh yeah, yeah. We went on a patrol one night. And we got pinned down by Germans. And I had my feet laying in the canal and didn't realize it. And we got back to our foxholes after that. And I told the foxhole buddy, I said, "I'm going to take my combat boots off and see if I can get my feet dried out." So I took my boots off, and 2 hours later I tried to put them back on. My feet had swelled up, puffed up, and I couldn't even get my boots on. So they sent me back to service company for a couple of days. Didn't go to the hospital, just back to service company. And my swelling went down, and I could wear my boots, and so then I didn't have no more trouble with them until on the way to Rome, when I just got big black blisters. And that's when I went back and soaked them in potassium permanganate for a good while.
So what do you remember about the kind of foxholes that the GIs made at Anzio? My understanding is that the foxholes were quite elaborate because you guys were spending so much time in them. They weren't just holes in the ground, but there were actually like little rooms and things. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Well, that was usually back towards the beach when we was back there training for the push-off. We had pretty nice foxholes. But right up on the front, why, they wasn't that elaborate.
The Mussolini Canal, can you explain to me what's the importance of it?
Well, we was dug in along it, dug into the side of the bank, and it was miserable place. Oh,
The Mussolini Canal, what did it look like though? When I think of a canal, I kind of just think of a river.
well, this was a big ditch with water in it.
A lot of water?
Yeah, because it rained about every day on Anzio. Oh, it was a miserable place. Miserable.
Tell me about
When you pray for a wound, well, you know how miserable it was.
tell me about the living conditions in combat.
Well,
What do you wear the same clothes every day?
oh yeah, yeah, yep.
How long did you go without a shower?
Well, I went in there on the 6th of February, and I didn't have a shower till I got wounded and got back. And I was in the evac hospital overnight, and then they loaded us on a hospital boat and took us back to Naples, the 17th General. And on the way back on a hospital boat, Ernie Powell, he was a war correspondent, and he come up to my bed and talked to me. And then he went on to the Pacific and got killed down in the Pacific.
Was he a nice guy?
Yeah.
What did he ask you?
Oh, different things. I can't tell you now what all we talked about, but he's a little guy. He wasn't very big.
Do you remember the first time you saw a dead German soldier?
Oh yeah. The night I joined them around the straw stack there, they just had a big counterattack, and there was some GIs there too that they hadn't, grave registration hadn't picked up yet. And then on Anzio, one day they had a big counterattack, and there was German boys and American boys laying out there crying. And it was the Germans' idea. They stopped the war for 2 hours. German ambulances come and picked up their boys, and we picked up our boys. Now, they stopped the war for 2 hours. Can you imagine that?
Did you see that happen?
Oh, yes, I was there.
So there was a truce?
Yep. I can show you right in the book there where it tells about it.
How close? Were you helping picking up wounded
No,
people?
we stayed in our foxholes. We didn't dare show ourselves and give our foxhole positions away, see? So, but I could hear the ambulances going back and forth, and then soon after 2 hours, well, they started shooting again.
Looking back at World War II, from a historical standpoint, a lot of people argue that World War II was the last good war. It was a just war worth fighting for, and that it was truly, good versus evil in a lot of senses. But when you and the other men were on the front, did you think about it that way? Did you guys feel like you were truly getting rid of an evil? Or was it just something that you guys were sent there to do?
Just something we sent there to do.
You didn't have like that lofty feeling that you were
No.
helping save the world?
I didn't. All I was thinking about if I could make it home.
Did you write letters to anyone back home?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Who'd you write to?
Wrote to my mother every chance I got.
What would you write about?
And I had girls write to me, but I didn't have no study girl when I went in.
What would you write about?
Well, they censored our letters.
Say that again?
They censored our letters. We couldn't tell them where we was or anything. And so when I was in the hospital with my first wound, why, this fellow by the name of Silvers from Michigan, he was going to get to come home. He had back problems. So I wrote an 18-page letter and sent it with him, and he mailed it when he got in the States. First time my folks knew where I was.
You actually told that? Oh, boy. 18 pages?
Oh, yeah.
What did you all write about?
Well, wrote about where all I'd been and everything and what I was doing and that I was okay and from not to worry about me and on and on and on.
Most of the men that you were with, I mean, what would you say the average age was of the GI on the front lines?
Well, anywhere from 18 to 35.
There were some old men like that?
When I was in the hospital the first time, or was it the second time, there was a fellow 35 years old, and he wasn't hit any worse than what I was. And when I left the hospital, they still couldn't get his to heal because he was a heavy boozer and heavy drinker. And but a lot of them that I was with was 19, 20, 21.
What kind of things did you guys talk about? You know, when you weren't on the front lines fighting, when you guys would get together, maybe when you're eating or something, what would you guys talk about amongst yourselves?
Getting to go home. Hoping to get to go home. Going to have to put a brake on that chair, ain't we? So,
You would all just talk about what it would be like when you get back home?
yeah.
Did you have any experiences with people who had premonitions that they were going to die and then they were killed?
Oh, not really. I had a kid to turn on me one time. We was getting ready to cross a ditch, and this was in France. And the Germans was firing an 88 down that ditch, down through the ditch. He was carrying the bazooka, and I was carrying the ammo, and all at once he throwed the bazooka down. Well, I seen him turn around and kind of rub his mouth, and I thought, what's going on here? About that time, he threw the bazooka down and took his .45, started beating me on my helmet. Took 3 of us to settle him down and send him back. And just a few days, he was back up there again. And we was in a wooded area in France there, up in the Vosges. And I seen it coming on. We was digging in, and I seen it coming on again. I called Sergeant Ewall over. I said, "Now this guy's got to go back, and they can't send him back up here again. He's done up here." So that's the last time I seen him then.
What do you think was wrong with him?
Well, he just lost it. He just couldn't take no more.
Did you have any experiences with men who had shell shock or battle fatigue?
Well, that was him. That's what was the matter with him. So then I seen guys when we went over the canal that morning to open up the Anzio beachhead. I seen guys take off to the rear.
You mean run away?
Yeah. And one of them wasn't too far from home here. But he's listed in the DA division history that he was discharged or missing in action, I think. But he come home, so I never did know the score, but he didn't want to talk to me.
You approached him about it?
No, I never said nothing to him.
Well, you said he didn't want to talk to you.
Well, I could tell he would shy away from me when I'd see him. Yeah. course, he's dead now too.
So, did you ever go souvenir hunting?
You mean overseas? On the front, you mean? Well, I had a German swastika flag in my pack when the night that they captured them boys, and I was afraid maybe they would take it out on them, but Kenny Lynch said they never bothered him. He said the worst thing about getting captured was getting back through our artillery. Said that was the worst thing about being captured, getting back through our artillery. But he worked. They had him working on a potato farm.
I know that a lot of the veterans I've interviewed who fought in the Pacific, oftentimes when the enemy dead would be ahead of them, they would pick stuff up.
Yeah.
I know the Luger was a prized souvenir.
Well, I got a Spanish 38 that I took off of a prisoner, a German captain. And it looks just like our 45. Disassembles, but it's a 38 instead of a 45.
Did you pray in combat?
Pray? I guess I did. I'll show you the Bible I carried.
What would you pray for?
Pray that I could live to get home.
Were most of the people on the front religious?
Oh, not all of them. Not all of them.
Did the war test your faith?
Did the war what?
Test your faith.
Oh, yeah. Very much so.
Are you religious nowadays?
I go to church. I haven't been there for 4 Sundays because the weather's been too bad, and I had a bad cold. I'm figuring on going Sunday to Greenville, St. John's Lutheran Church.
So, you'd mentioned, can you tell me the story about your foxhole buddy? What was his name?
Thomas. Thomas was the one from Connecticut that got killed on Anzio right in front of me when I got wounded. And then the second over in France was Paycine. He was from Springfield, Ohio.
And tell me...
I went to see his folks. And you talk about people so glad to see me. But I figured Pappas from Columbus was closer buddy to Paycine than what I was. And I figured Pappas had went to see him, but nobody had ever seen him. They didn't know how he was killed or anything. And his mother we was the best of friends then until she passed away. And
did you tell them how he was killed?
I didn't tell them it was our own artillery, no. I didn't think they needed to know that.
What did you tell them?
I just told them that he was hit by a shell, the same shell that hit me, and that he passed away in the hospital side of me that night. And then the first thing, they was Catholic, first thing she asked me is if there's any priests nearby. I said, yeah, there was a couple priests standing around the bed when he passed away.
Is that true?
Yeah.
Were you awake when he passed?
Yeah.
What kind of man was Paycine?
Well, I'll tell you. I used to have to stand my guard and his guard too, because he'd go to sleep. He'd go to sleep invariably. He'd go to sleep. And so I couldn't trust him when I was taking guard. Same time he was, why I'd just stand my guard and stay awake while he was there too.
Was he a nice man?
Oh yeah. Yeah, he played the accordion. And the company kept the accordion. And when we'd get pulled back for a break or something, why, they'd want Paycine to play the accordion, and he would.
How old was he when he was killed?
My age.
Which was?
19.
And Thomas?
Thomas was older. I don't know how. I can't tell you how old he was. He was from Connecticut.
Did you visit his folks?
No, no. No.
So, going back to Anzio, during the daytime, what would you all be doing?
In our foxholes, staying hid.
But how do you pass the time? The day's pretty long.
You'd sleep some and bail water part of the time. And it was always a miserable bunch, I'll tell you. Miserable bunch.
Was it hot?
Well, no, this was in March and April and February. It was just cold and rainy, but it wasn't. I was lucky I got hit when I did up in France because I didn't hit all that severe winter. I was back in the hospital over Thanksgiving and Christmas, and I was lucky a lot of ways. Very lucky.
So, if you guys are staying hid in the foxholes during the daytime, at nighttime, what happens?
Well, if they wasn't shelling you, I get out and get some exercise and do your job. But if the kid in the foxhole got the diarrhea, he couldn't get out the foxhole. He'd have to go in his helmet, and then you sat right there and soaked it all up. But I never got the GIs. They called it the GIs back then.
Did that actually happen to people? They had to go crap in their helmets?
Oh, yeah.
How would they clean it?
Best way they could. We had water.
Talk to me about what it's like to be under a German artillery barrage.
Well, you're scared to death that one's going to hit you. When I went back over there for the 40th anniversary, the bus took us down to Anzio from Rome. And me and this Earl Ravencroft, he was from Indiana, we didn't get to see what we wanted to see that day. So he come to me that night when we got back to Rome. He said, "Would you like to go back to Anzio?" I said, "Yeah." I said, I didn't get to see what I wanted to see. He said, "I didn't either." So we rented a Italian driver and car, and he took us back down. He was English speaking. He took us back down to Anzio the next day, and we got to see about where our foxholes was, and we met this family. And her son had taken off work so he could show us around that day. And then she wanted us there for supper, for evening meal. And so we got to see what we wanted to see. And of course, Earl, I thought we was east further, our foxholes, than what he thought. So we didn't come to no real conclusion on just exactly where we was. But anyhow, this boy that took off work to show us around said that there's a lot of boys buried alive by artillery. And he said that they was still digging up human bones.
Mr. Marker, did you ever provide first aid to any of the wounded men around you?
No. No.
Do you remember?
I was carrying that one guy back that passed away in my arms.
What was his name?
Thigman from Mississippi.
And what kind of man was he?
Quiet, real quiet.
And where was he hit?
He was hit in the leg, but not bad. unless there was shrapnel went someplace else that I didn't know about. But I figured he died from shock, just the shock of being wounded.
Was he conscious when
Yeah,
you were carrying him?
yeah.
Were you talking?
No, wasn't talking much.
Okay, so describe to me what it's like to have artillery shells going off around you.
Oh, you're scared to death. You're scared to death.
How do you protect yourself?
Well, there's really no way. A direct hit on. That's what. There's a lot of boys buried alive on Anzio with direct hits, right on their foxhole. But it happened quite a bit, or the direct hits.
Did you have any experiences with house-to-house fighting?
Well, yes and no. In France one time, we was in this house overlooking a valley, and the German family was there, or the French family was there, and left us use the basement, and we had the machine gun stuck out a cellar window, and this German patrol was coming up, but they didn't come towards the house, so there wasn't no firing done. So, but yeah, we was in homes in France that and the French more or less several times the French hid us from the Germans.
Did you ever use grenades in combat?
I never threw a grenade, but we had them on our belt. We took 15 prisoners one time. This was in France, and we gave them to a fellow by the name of Shook to take them back, and he had a Thompson machine gun, and he got around the first hill, and that Tommy gun opened up, and he come back and said they tried to get away, and I know damn well that he shot them in cold blood.
What do you think about
I never had nothing for him after that. I don't know whether he lived through the war or not, but I can remember that very plain. We disarmed them Germans and sent him back with them, and he killed them.
Sir, what do you remember about the breakout of Anzio?
Well, it was terrible. It was terrible. Like I say, seen Germans coming running out of them stone houses with one arm off and the other arm in the air, other arm up in the air, giving up. And like I say, after 2 hours of fighting, our 3 rifle companies was practically wiped out. And the captain lined us up, and there was 17 of us still able to go, not counting that didn't count the mortar squad. The mortar squad was still back.
But tell me, how did you all prepare for the breakout? What was the preparation you all made in order to make the breakout?
Well, I don't know whether you ever heard anything about battle sleds or not. They had battle sleds that they pulled behind the tank, and they'd lay down on them sleds and then get out, but they didn't prove out too well.
Were you in a battle sled?
No.
So what was the purpose of the battle sled?
To try to infiltrate the Germans' lines.
But what's the purpose of the sled?
Well, to protect them, they was laying down in that sled, see?
Protect them from what?
From being shot.
I thought it was also to protect from landmines.
Well, that too, yeah. But
But the breakout of Anzio, I mean, what made that day different? I mean, did the Americans bombard the Germans with artillery and then all of the riflemen started just rushing up?
it just, I don't know, it was a terrible day. The 3rd Division lost 900 and some men that day, May 23rd. They compared it with Iwo Jima in Pacific. So I got the information there. There was 7,000 killed on Anzio, and I forget how many casualties.
But what you all were preparing, this was the breakout. At that point, the Mussolini Canal, did that separate German territory from American territory?
Yeah, more or less.
But the Germans had the high ground, right?
Had the high ground all around us.
So when you all were making, and you were in the flatland, the marshland.
Yeah.
When you were making the breakout, how far did you all have to go to get to the hills?
Well, it really wasn't too far. Like I say, Valmontone, where our own planes, it was a colored squadron. They strafed us and bombed us. And one side was straight up, and the other side was, like I told you before, you had to jump down on some rocks. But there was boys killed that day, and boys that broke legs jumping down on them rocks. So it was hell no matter how you figured.
But before you all, like for example, the Marines fighting in the Pacific, they would all be on their ships, the little invasion crafts, the Higgins boat.
Higgins boats.
They would be on the Higgins boat right before the island, right?
Yeah.
And then the big naval destroyers would bombard the island with artillery, and then they would go in after the naval bombardment. What I wanted to know is, when you guys were making the breakout, before you guys all started towards the German territory, was there a big American bombardment?
Artillery, yeah. Artillery.
And what do you remember about that bombardment? I mean, how severe was it?
Well, I remember more about southern France. I never heard such a bombardment before we hit the beaches in southern France. I remember more about that than I do at Anzio.
Well, tell me about southern France. Did you take on fire during the invasion?
Yeah, but nothing like they did up at Normandy. We didn't have near the opposition that they had up there.
Well, what opposition was there? What do you remember seeing?
Well, had mines, and Germans firing at us. But nothing like the breakout at Anzio.
When you became the bazooka man, you carried what other weapon?
.45.
But no rifle.
No.
Did you ever use the .45 in combat?
Yeah. But not near as much as the M1 and the machine gun. Of course, like I say, I never got rank pushed on me. A lot of guys got rank pushed on them, you know, when they'd lose everybody. And
what does that mean, rank pushed?
Well, I never got past a PFC, private first class.
Really?
When I went over to Columbus to get this medal pinned on me, well, it was colonels and sergeants and captains. I was the only PFC, I think, that got this.
Why didn't you get above PFC?
I never got it pushed on me, and I didn't want it. All I wanted to look after was myself. So,
Can you please tell me the story behind how? Can you please take me through your actions that ultimately led to you receiving the Silver Star? Where were you? What happened?
well, it was up in the Vosges Mountains in France. And St. D was the first town that the Germans set afire, set the whole town afire when they moved out. And you could see that from where I got the Silver Star. So, what else do you want to know?
Take me through what happened.
Well, that Saturday morning on October the 21st, 44, Captain Gates ordered me up there, and he said, Marker, you're going to be on the bazooka today. So I was on the bazooka that day. Well, the first thing we got pinned down by that stone house, and I fired a round in there, and the Germans come out and give up.
What do you remember about getting pinned down? What kind of fire were you guys taking on?
Well, machine gun fire, and
And was it a multi-story house?
yeah, it was 2 stories, yeah.
And so you guys were taking on machine gun fire, so what did you do?
They wanted me to fire a round and bazooka into it. But we was getting fire from this house.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, when I hit it with a bazooka, why, that was the end of it. They come out and give up. Then we didn't go much further. We got fired down by the tank, German tank, Tiger tank. And I had to go out in front of the company 100 yards or more to get a shot at it, and they had me zeroed in with their machine gun. Still don't know how they missed me.
Where did you aim the bazooka? At the tank?
At the turret, and it was a lucky shot. I mean, 1 in 100 to hit where you wanted it to hit. And like I say, and if I wouldn't have hit it with that first shell, I wouldn't be here because my ammunition bearer didn't follow me out there.
So what happened?
The driver could still back the tank up, and he started backing up towards the German lines, and I turned to get my ammunition bearer to follow me or to reload me, and he hadn't followed me out there. So that was the end of it.
What happened to the tank?
He withdrew back to the German lines.
Do you think there were any casualties in the tank?
Well, I imagine there was, yeah. I don't know.
Was it an open turret? Was the tank commander outside when you hit it?
No,
It was
it's inside.
so they couldn't use the 88.
No, I knocked the guns out.
Okay. And it just took one shot?
One shot's all. But like I say, I might have fired 10 more rounds and never hit it. It was just a lucky shot.
And how long would you say you were up there?
Just long enough to fire that one round.
So after you had hit the stone house, how many Germans came out?
4 or 5, if I remember right.
And they came out right after you hit it?
They come out with their hands up, and but how many was inside that didn't make it out, I don't know.
Do you even believe there were casualties in the house?
Oh yeah.
What makes you say that? Couldn't those 4 or 5 just been it?
That bazooka was a wicked. Hell, I can still hear it hit that stone house, and I can still hear it hit the tank.
So how long after was the tank from the house incident?
Just a few minutes.
So after you guys get pinned down by the house, you hit the house, the Germans surrender, then you guys move forward,
Yeah.
and you're pinned down by a tank, or you're told there's a tank and you're the one who needs to go take it out?
No, we was pinned down by the company was pinned down by the tank.
They were firing?
Yeah, when I knocked it out.
So how did you get close to the tank if they were firing at you all?
I tried to get close enough that I thought I could hit it.
But were you like hiding or were you crawling?
Just some bushes, behind some bushes, but they had me. I still don't know how they missed me. And like I say, if that first shell wouldn't have hit the turret, I wouldn't be sitting here.
How close did you get to the tank?
Oh, I don't know whether it would be the house across the road, maybe.
Oh, so like almost 100 yards or around, a little less? Like a football field away or no?
Oh no, not that far.
Okay, so as you get close to the tank's firing at you, the machine guns. What's that like to have bullets going off around you?
You just think it's all over with. You think it's all over. Like I say, I don't know how I lived through all of it.
So, after the tank got hit, what did you do?
I went back to the company.
And then?
Well, then another out. That was Saturday afternoon, and we went ahead and took the wooded area, and you could see Sink D, and the Germans was taking off from it and setting it afire. So the next morning, Sunday morning, is when I got seriously wounded by our own artillery.
Did you go through the town that was on fire?
No. I don't know after I got hit, I don't know what the company done.
So you never made it into Germany?
No.
Do you remember the day you were hit? The date?
Yeah, October 22nd, 44.
That was your last day of combat?
Right.
Oh, so you were in combat for about 10 months.
150 days.
Is that right?
150 days. Now, Audie Murphy of course, he joined them in Africa, and he went clear up. The 3rd Division had 10 campaigns, and I was in 4 of them, and I think Audie Murphy was in most of them. Just as we got to Anzio, there was a big swish out in the water, about 400 yards away, and we said something to the veterans that was on there that had been to Anzio and been back to the hospital and was going back to their outfits. Said they got a big gun up there in the mountains, in the hill somewhere, and our planes can't find it. Well, I can show you there. It was 180 millimeter, and they had it on a railroad car. And they'd run it out and fire it, and then they'd back it back into the hill. And that's the reason why our planes couldn't find it.
And you and Al, that night, what did you both do?
The night we slept in the slit trench.
So you slept in the slit trenches.
Well, we didn't sleep. That's where we was all night long, and scared to death, crying. The shells hitting all around us. The Germans are shelling us. Terrible.
And on Anzio, what's always confused me is Anzio, I've always thought it used to be a marshland, right?
Oh.
But there were houses on the flatland, like stone houses.
Yeah.
And what would the Germans use those houses for?
Well, the Germans used them and we used them.
For what?
for protection.
And observation?
Yeah.
So do you remember any of the fighting that occurred in those houses?
Well, you mean while we was in the houses?
And when you were in the stone houses, or when you guys were trying to get the Germans out of the houses?
Well, they used them. They used them mostly for observation. And then I can remember that one time, and then Audie Murphy will tell you in his book. See, it had to dry up before they could use the tanks, before they could give us any trouble. As long as the fields was wet, well, the tanks had to stay on the road. So,
were you ever strafed by the German Luftwaffe?
well, when I was in the 17th General, the first time I was wounded, why they bombed and of course your hospitals had your big red cross on the roofs, you know, and the Germans' excuse was that they had our planes got after them and they had to unload their load. But they bombed the corner of the 17th General when I was in it.
How far away were you?
From where they hit, you mean? Oh, the other end of the hospital. They hit the one end that I
I mean,
wasn't.
did you hear it when it happened?
Yeah. And then Mount Vesuvius erupted.
Mm-hmm.
And we could, that red lava at night running down the side of the hill, we could see that from the hospital. Trude was the kid's name. That the sniper got off to the right of me. And of course, he never knew what hit him. Well, most of the time we had, like I say, we had them on the run. And when we first take them French towns, the first thing the Germans would do, or the French people would do, would get the women up on a platform that had anything to do with the Germans and shave their heads.
If they had been sleeping with the German men.
Yeah. So I thought that, I didn't think that was right, but
Is it true that they would knock down the church steeples because the Germans used it as observation posts or for snipers when you guys would go into towns?
oh, I really don't remember that.
Did you ever have a hatred for the Germans?
Oh yeah, especially Hitler. But you know, when he's on Anzio, Sally the Berlin bitch, they called her.
Axis Sally?
She'd come on the radio and just say things to discourage us, you know. Boys, who do you think your girlfriend's dancing with tonight, and stuff like that. And then in Pacific they had Tokyo Rose, you know. Yeah.
Would you guys listen to Axis Sally?
Oh yeah. I mean, they was hid just like we was hid, you know. They had foxholes. See, there was, I don't know whether you ever heard the story about the Rangers on Anzio.
The ones who got captured?
Two battalions were wiped out.
And Cisterna.
Yeah. There's six, I think there was 6 Rangers that made it back to their lines. The Germans left them walk through and then opened up on them. I was wounded twice.
Can you take me through the first time? What happened?
I was on March the 20th on Anzio, and we'd been in reserve, and we was marching back up through a plowed field, and this German 88 fired at us. Got 9 of us out of the platoon, and I got hit least of any of them and killed my foxhole buddy, Thomas, right in front of me. He just dropped like a rock.
Was it a single shell or was it a bombardment?
It was an 88. I mean, yeah, it was like an artillery shell.
But it was just one that landed right in the middle of you all. And where were you hit?
Cheek of my rear end, buttocks. Went through there and dropped down this leg, and I had to reach down and hold the shrapnel away till it cooled off. That's the reason why I'm sitting on a pillow. Well, we was on this roadblock in France. We had the machine gun down each road. It was a Y in the road, and we had 6 men on guard all the time, 2 on each gun and 2 on the bazooka. And I'd went off guard at 4:30 in the morning, and rest of us was laying up behind some hedgerows, wasn't dug in or anything. And sometime the next morning at daylight, the company runner come up there and wanted to know where the guns was. I said, well, they're down there on the road. They said, there ain't nothing down there on the road. So sometime after 4:30, between 4:30 and daylight, the Germans walked in and give the password that they'd probably heard from the French and captured 6 of the boys and both machine guns and my pack. And Kenny Lynch was from Lancaster, Ohio. I went to see him after the war, and he was one of them that was captured that night. And he said 2 of them Germans walked right up where you guys was sleeping and never woke you. So that's another close call.
So you could have been captured very easily.
Well, yeah.
Why do you think they never woke you?
They had all they wanted. They had 6 men and all the machine guns and bazooka and my pack, and they walked right up where we was. Kenny said, the only thing they didn't want to arouse us, afraid one of us would open up on them, I suppose, and then alert the company behind us. See, we was out in front of the company on that roadblock.
Did you have anything in your pack?
I had a German swastika flag, and I'm afraid they'd take that out on the ones they captured, but Kenny said they didn't bother.
What advice do you want to give to future generations?
Such as what?
Based on your experiences in combat, what advice, or also your experiences as a 93-year-old man, what advice would you want to give to future generations?
Just hope they don't have to go through what I went through.
If you were to give me some wisdom for my life, what would you tell me?
If you was going to be drafted, I'd tell you to enlist.
Do you remember the names of anyone else who was killed in your outfit?
Oh, yeah. A lot of them.
Like who?
Robles.
How was he killed?
He was killed on the breakout at Anzio. And them bodies laid there from the 20th of March from the 23rd of May till in June sometime, when we was back taking amphibious training for southern France, and they come and wanted to know identification marks on some of them. Well, this Robles had a scar on his face, bad scar, and I told him about that. And but them bodies was just in that short time in the hot summer, they was pretty well decomposed. Of course, the Italians had taken the combat boots off of them and a lot of the clothing. And
are you afraid of death?
no, I'm ready to go.
Really? Were you afraid when you were overseas?
Oh, yes. I wasn't ready to go then. Now I'm ready to go.
Why?
when I can't get out and do anything, now I got 2 grasshopper mowers, and I still mow my yard, and I got a woods over here, a 9-acre woods that I mow. And when I can't do that, then I'm done. I can't see me sitting in a rest home, but it may happen, but I hope not.
What do you believe happens after a person dies?
Well, I hope they go to heaven.
Mr. Marker, what kind of person do you want to be remembered as?
Well, hard-working, good father, good husband. And hard work never killed anybody, because I've worked hard. I've raised 29 crops of tobacco, and that's a year-round job. And I quit that in '73, I think. It's the last crop I raised. Drove a school bus for 31 years. Retired in '77. Was township trustee. And I've had a good life. But I was with a kid, Wally Sneed. He was reclassified into that quartermaster outfit, and he was wounded in the back by a grenade. Boy, when I get home, I'm not going to strike a lick. This country owes me a living. So me and Mary Lou was on a drive one time down the Blue Ridge Parkway, and I seen Abington, Virginia. Of course, I had my address book along. I said, let's pull off here and see what old Wally's doing. And that's what he was doing, sitting on the porch with his mother and in just a shack. He wasn't striking a lick. And I didn't even want to get home. I got a card from him wanting me to donate to a church. You know what I've done with that, don't you? Yep. So he said what he's going to do. He said, the country owes me a living. He wasn't going to strike a lick.
Are you proud of your service?
Yes. Very proud. I'd give anything if my wife could have been living when I got over to the State House and got this pinned on me. She'd have busted buttons right off her blouse.
Mr. Marker, what are we looking at?
The bombed out German convoy.
And did you see this when you were overseas?
Walked right up through there. It was still burning. German men sitting in the trucks, burn up. And then
What happened to them?
our planes and artillery bombed them out before we got there.
And where was this?
Mont-Lamar,
Where's that?
France.
Oh, is this the Feliz Gap?
Hmm?
The Feliz Gap? Isn't that where this happened? The Germans got trapped, right? And then all of the artillery hit them?
Our planes bombed and strafed them.
What else do you remember about going through all the wreckage? Did you
It was still smoldering, and like I say, there was dead horses and dead Germans sitting in their vehicles yet.
How long had it gone on, the bombardment, before you guys got there?
I can't answer that.
But it had to be the same day.
Oh yeah.
Did you ever see Kilroy? You never saw it overseas?
Oh yeah. They had that up everywhere.
Like where?
In the bathrooms and places.
Did you ever ride it?
No.
So is this your original 3rd Division book?
Yes, it's in bad shape.
How did you get it? Did they just send you one after the war?
Well, I went to the reunion in Columbus, Ohio. in the room that I stayed in, he had two of them, and he gave me one of them. That's how I got the original. And my wife sent, and we got 3 new ones. John Shirley didn't show you this book?
You're making it seem like it's a competition between you and John Shirley. Are you jealous of him? You know, most veterans' addresses would have changed from all those years ago, but yours is the same.
Yep.
Did you ever see General O'Daniel?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Did you write in a lot of the pages?
Yeah, I wrote where I joined them and everything.
It was before this. Well, February 2nd. You got there on the 6th? Here. This is what.
What are you looking for?
Was there anything else you wanted to show me on this before we wrap it up, sir? Any of your pictures?
Oh, I wanted to show you. Did John show you the medal of the Legion of Honor?
Oh, I don't believe so. Will you show it to me?
That's a pretty medal. Right here.
So who gave that to you?
That's the French Legion of Honor right there. And this is the French Corps Gear.
That's you?
That's me.
You look like a kid.
Well, I was. This is
17.
General Rattay pinning the Silver Star on me.
Which one of these are you most proud of?
Well, I'm awful proud of this one here.
What is that?
That's a. You asked me too quick. It's a
The Ohio.
Ohio Military Hall of Fame for valor.
Wow.
And here's the Greatest Generation.
Who gave you that?
I forget where the. Tom Brokaw. I had a picture taken with her down in San Antonio, Texas, and I don't know whatever happened to it.
You met Audie Murphy, though?
I met him overseas
Oh, you did?
back when we was in Red Metal Char.
Did you know was he a big deal at that point in time?
Yeah,
What was he like?
just a kid like me.
Yeah. What's that a picture of?
Hmm?
What's this a picture of?
That's me on the boat coming home on the Hermitage. Got my combat jacket and my combat shoes on.
And then what's that?
Hmm? This is me in Nice, France.
And then this?
Hmm? This one here,
Yeah.
that was taken in Nice, France. And this is over at the State House at State Representative Beakey. This is my state citation for the Silver Star.
Dale M. Marker, Private First Class Infantry, Company L, 15th Infantry Regiment, for gallantry in action. At noon on 21st of October 1944, near France, Private First Class Marker crossed 100 yards of open ground under direct fire of the enemy tank in order to get into position on the tank's flank where he could fire his bazooka, a weapon he had only recently been assigned. Effectively, although bullets from the tank's machine gun struck the ground less than a foot away from Private First Class Marker, he remained alone without cover for 10 minutes and fired his bazooka until he silenced the tank's gun and caused it to withdraw. Private First Class Marker gallantry in action and extreme devotion to duty were instrumental in his unit's accomplishments of the mission and were keeping with the highest tradition of the military service and reflect great credit upon himself, His unit, the 3rd Infantry Division, and United States Army.
Perfect. All true, right?
No, I wasn't out there for 10 minutes.
Yeah, Dad's shaking his head no. Is he?
I can't believe I read that and didn't hesitate too much.
Good job, Stevie.
You did good, thank you.
Did I do all right?
Good
Yeah,
job,
you
Stevie.
did
Good job,
good.
Stevie.
Now, I just needed to know, Mr. Margaret, was that story about the pillbox really true?
Yeah.
About what?
Do you remember the pillbox?
I remember the pillbox where you and I got into.
Yeah.
You went back on a tour? What was it?
I was in Germany in the service,
Okay.
okay, and they came over to visit us.
And he had a Volkswagen.
And
And we
had
went
a
down
little-
through Switzerland and up through France.
Yeah.
And what did you see?
What did we see? Well, we came up just right where he went walking. And that's when he said there was a pillbox up here. And we got there and it was there. And we got out and peed in it.
Do you remember peeing in the pillbox?
Oh, yeah.
Do you remember, did you take out that pillbox?
That's what they claim.
Then we went on up a ways and then we hit the National Cemetery over there. And then that's where he went back to for the 40th
Oh,
anniversary and the 50th anniversary.
Epinal Cemetery.
Boy, Rishi has to be the producer, the interviewer, the photographer,
Yeah.
the
Videographer.
video. He's got it. Doing
Are
all
you
like
He's
you.
got a story to tell you about a woman that came up to him when he was over there on your 40th or your 50th.
Anniversary. Wasn't there a woman that came up?
What? There a woman that came up to you that said she knew the guy that looked just like you?
Yeah. I said, well, I wasn't. You must have come up from Naples. This was on Anzio. This lady on Anzio.
On any Anzio anniversary?
Yeah. And said she knew so. The boy looked just like me. I said, well, you must have come up from Naples then.
Yeah, but there are probably a lot of kids out there.
Oh, sure.
Especially in Japan, they had a lot of when the occupation troops went in. They had a lot of couples.
Well, I'm going to go home.
Yeah, I did. I didn't tell you
Are
everything.
you behind me? You parked behind me? Can I
Yeah.
back out?
Oh,
I'm going to go.